Good evening, everyone. Welcome and thank you. Welcome to do the prayers, starting with Manjushri, prayers, blessing speech, and refuge, and the Heart Sutra. I pay homage to the Guru and Lord Arya Manjushri. Your intelligence shines forth like the sun, unclouded by the two obscurations. You hold the scripture text in your heart, symbolic of the seeing of all things as they are. Those who are caught in the prison of samsara are confused in the darkness of ignorance and are overwhelmed by their sufferings. In 60 ways with your speech you teach migratory being, to whom you are compassionate as your only child. Your proclamation of Dharma is like roaring thunder, which awakens beings from the stupor of delusions and frees us from chains of karma. Your word is sword of wisdom, hewing down suffering wherever spells appear, clearing away the darkness of ignorance. Primordially pure, the princely body is the embodiment of the perfection of the Bodhisattva dwelling on ten bhumi. I pay homage to Manjushri, who dwells in the dark, with the minds in the center of the world, marks of a Buddha. With the brilliance of your wisdom and compassion, illumine the darkness enclosing my mind, enlighten my intelligence, wisdom, so that I may gain insight into the Buddha's words and texts that explain them. Om Mara Bhajana Deya 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 Om Mara Bhajana Deya 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 Om Mara Bhajana Deya Mara Bhajana Deya Mara Bhajana Deya Mara Bhajana Deya Omara Bhajana In Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, I take refuge until light will reach. By the merit of listening to this teaching, may I attain Buddha for the sake of all living beings. In Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, I take refuge until light will reach. By merit of listening to this teaching, may I attain Buddha for the sake of all living beings. In Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, I take refuge until enlightenment will reach. By the merit of listening to this teaching, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all living beings. May all living beings have happiness as the cause of happiness. May all living beings be free from sorrow and the cause of sorrow. May all living beings not be separate from the bliss that is sorrowless. May all living beings leave attachment and hatred towards near ones afar by living with equanimity. May all living beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May all living beings be free from sorrow and the cause of sorrow. May all living beings not be separate from the bliss that is sorrowless. May all living beings leave attachment and hatred towards near ones afar by living with equanimity. May all living beings have happiness and cause of happiness. May all living beings be free from sorrow and the cause of sorrow. May all living beings not be separate from the bliss that is sorrowless. May all living beings leave attachment and hatred towards near ones by far, living with equanimity. To the perfection of wisdom, the Blessed Mother, I pay homage. Thus I've heard at one time, the Blessed One Bhagavan was dwelling in the Rajgriha in Vulture's Peak, together with the great assembly of Sangha and the great assembly of Bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One was absorbed in the Samadhi on the enumeration of phenomena, or called profound illumination. Also at that time, the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, Subhiravalokitesha, was contemplating the meaning of the profound perfection of wisdom. He saw that five aggregate also is empty of inherent existence. Then, through the power of the Buddha, the Venerable Shariputra said this to the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, Subhiravalokitesha. How should a son or daughter of good lineage train who wishes to practice profound perfection of wisdom? Thus he spoke, and the Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, Subhiravalokitesha, said this to the Venerable Shariputra. Shariputra, whatever son or daughter of good lineage wishes to practice profound perfection should view in this way. They should correctly view the five aggregates also empty of inherent existence. Form is emptiness, emptiness of form. Emptiness is not other than form, and form is not other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discrimination, composition of factors, consciousness are empty. Shariputra, in the same way, all phenomena are merely empty, that is without characteristic. They're not created, they're not seized, they have no impurity. They're not devoid of impurity, they do not decrease and increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness there's no form, no feeling, no discrimination, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no phenomena. There is no eye element, so forth, up to mind element, also up to no element of mental consciousness. There is no ignorance, no exhaustion of ignorance, and so forth, no aging and death, no exhaustion of aging and death. In the same way, there is no suffering, there is no origin, no cessation, no power, no exalted wisdom, no attainment, also no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, because bodhisattvas have no attainment, they depend on the mind and the perfection of wisdom. Because their minds are without obstructions, they are without fear. Having completely passed beyond all error, they go to the completion nirvana. All the Buddhas abide in the three times, having relied on the perfection of wisdom, became manifestly perfect Buddhas in the state of unsurpassed, perfect and permanent enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of perfection of wisdom is mantra of great knowledge. The unsurpassed mantra, the mantra equal to the unequal, the mantra that thoroughly pacifies all suffering. Because it is not false, it should be known as the truth. Mantra of perfection of wisdom is proclaimed. Adyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Adyadam gade gade bara bara zangade bodhisattva. Adyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Adyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Adyadam gade gade bara bara zangade bodhisattva. Adyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara 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 gade bara zangade bodhisattva. Tadyadam gade gade bara bara zangade bodhisattva. Shariputra, a bodhisattva, mahasattva should train the profound perfection of wisdom in that way. Then the Blessed One arose in Samadhi and said this to Bodhisattva, the Mahasattva, superior Avalokitesha. Well done, well done, well done. One of good lineage, it is just so. One of good lineage is like that. Profound perfection should be practiced just as you have taught. Even Tathagatas rejoice in this. And the Blessed One having so spoken, Venerable Shariputra, the Bodhisattva and the Mahasattva, Spirit of Avalokitesha, and all those gathered there, those of God, gods, humans, demigods, and Gandharvas were filled with the praise the words of the Blessed One. So we continue in the very last part of Nagarjuna's Precious Garland, consisting of his beautiful writing, in 5 chapters, and we're reading currently the 5th chapter. Each of these chapters deals with a specific topic, and the 5th chapter deals with the conduct a bodhisattva must adhere to in order to take steps to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. Every endeavor people usually have a short-term, a medium-term, or maybe long-term purposes. And so bodhisattvas are those who think in terms of long-term and time-wise very long, and purpose-wise for everyone, and so method-wise a very skillful one. Whereas ordinary people want something very quick for this body, with this person, preferably within this very moment. So I want things now type of attitudes. A bodhisattva is courageous to see the futility and childishness of short-term, self-centered, I want my way type of thing. So therefore, it was taught how to firstly recognize the destructive, negative thoughts that may impede oneself even to achieve beneficial things for short-term, let alone long-term. So sentient beings are always like that, due to the spell of the afflictions and destructive negative minds, which they have no acquaintance to, even though they are completely under its influence. They are not aware that they are obscured, seized from within by these afflictions. The afflictions or klesha are the one that impedes us to be happy from being. We try so hard, but we can't find happiness. It's not that we are not trying to find happy or be good to others, but the afflictions just impede us. They just completely interrupt us, and they blind us, and they decapacitate us. And so that is if one does not know that, even one wants something now, today, for myself, just to make my senses happy, still the one would not succeed to do that, because even to begin temporary happiness, one still have to happiness is a state of mind that is contented and not overtaken by afflictions, let alone long-term beneficial things for oneself and others. So the bodhisattva therefore first prioritize, not look for short-term benefit. And short-term, they may have to suffer, have to own their own afflictions, recognize their own afflictions, and see the all undesirable experience one has had in the past, or those we are having, are none other than the tricks and creation of one's own afflicted mind, not the doings of anybody else. Until one has such a fitness courageously to own and accept them, there's no way that we can even find temporary happiness. This is the whole thing. So that's why a good deal of time is spent to identify what are the destructive, afflictive emotions. The bodhisattva must know what are they up against, so to speak. And in the society, actually, ordinary people think it's the world or the people, things that are cause of their problems. So they try to combat with them as to improve, to bring happiness, but actually to worsen the situation. They perpetuate the very conflict, the very neurosis, very unskillful behaviors are never recognized by oneself, and so the vicious cycle. So by having good understanding of the negative emotions and how they impede our own well-being, let alone future well-being or well-being of others, even we want to be of use to others, we are not used to others, it become harmful to them. So therefore, the benefit is outweighed by the harm. when one is under the influence of the afflictions. So when a bodhisattva has overcome those obstacles, then he makes a rapid progress, as we went through all the different stages of enlightenment, from beginner all the way to having to first accumulate all the merit. Having accumulated all the merit, then one is able to overcome all the demeritorious obstacles that stand in the way as a karma and obscurations. And hence, slowly those karma become enlightened activities, the obscurations become wisdom, So when the merit and wisdom becomes equipped and gathered along the way, then one goes through the path of preparation, path of seeing, and so on. So we went through all the 10 bhumis. Now this last part is talking about the how the practitioner should now go to engage in meritorious practice. So of course, while we have gone through the 10 bhumis and 5 paths, but that's if one has reached those things. But those practitioners who are merely inspired to do this, now they not only sum up all the qualities of the bodhisattvas and know the infinite qualities of the bodhisattvas, but then use to engage in the 7 limb practices, accumulation of merit and so on. So we were talking about how a practitioner should learn to recollect the qualities of the enlightened ones. And because prior to that, we were always recollecting the demerits or wrongdoings of other people, Now, as a practitioner is always able to witness and envision the infinite positive qualities of the enlightened ones, Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and the merit field and the practitioners. So because of that, the person has now refuge. Because he has refuge, he tried to authenticate and practice his refuge by engaging in the 7-fold prayers. That's what we've been talking about. And so then one actually steps on the practice of cultivating these, because they realize amazing merit is cultivated when one does the wholesome deeds in the presence of the enlightened ones. Through the merit of having done thus, meaning doing the various refuge and offering and confession and so on, the merit that I did earlier and will do, all sentient beings aspire to the highest enlightenment. So now if we have just got this amazing fortitude of finding the way out of samsara by practicing the Bodhisattva's way, we realize until we become successful to do these preliminary practices by paying homage and dedicating merit, all the way those things, and then we also wish to have this very power to influence other sentient beings, not just ourselves reaching the enlightenment. See, this is what we're talking about. Not just me, not just now, not just for today. Now, one realizes the huge objective is for the sake of all sentient beings. Now it looks very possible. Wow, wonderful accomplishment. But it's even better if we do with and for all sentient beings. So may all sentient beings have all the stainless faculties. So now we are praying, because many of them don't. They are born with very, 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 very impaired sense faculties. Firstly, birth faculties, the form of life. Others are so low rebirth, they just don't stand a chance to practice that. Even if you just say, if you do this practice, with us for the next half an hour, you be good. They still don't know what we're talking about. They just stay there, They're just looking for some food or something. Other than that, they don't know what to do. So most sentient beings are completely decapacitated by the nature of their life, what they call unfortunate, miserable rebirth. They call life itself is very miserable, and even if they don't have the same level of intelligence that we human beings have. So one is offering prayers. May all sentient beings have stainless faculties. So this means we are recognizing our faculties. release from all conditions of non-leisure. So non-leisure means those eight unfree moments, unfree situations. If you're animals, if you're hungry ghosts, if you're demigods, or if you're even people who are living in a very difficult circumstance, completely controlled by job, worldly duties, they don't have any freedom to practice. Most people are time poor. Even in the materialistic, very developed country, most people have everything, but they're time poor to practice. They have to fight just to get a little few hours to study and practice. Otherwise, they suffer. They suffer the lack of freedom to practice. The demands and false promises of the material world raises great hopes. Most people invest too much time and effort and energy and for that, and hence they are not free to do other practices. Particularly, most people are just doing recreational things. They have this on Friday. They have this there on. They're usually running up and down. Of course, some is good. I'm not saying good mix of good is good, but so much so some don't actually have time for practice, study. It's non-leisure, all condition non-leisure. And they're not free to do that. They have to go and do that with them or for them, or they have to with them because they have a demanding person in their life and they just want you to be there, for whatever. And the person can't say they can go and do this. They have to fight quite hard to get that time, isn't it? Very few people got time, freedom of action, and endowment with good livelihood. Endowment meaning that we have Dharma's teachings, Buddha came, Dharma teaching there, we have access to Dharma, we have Sangha, and all these, and our own everyday to do life situation is really comfortable. We don't have to miss Dharma for the sake of those. We are relatively comfortable. So therefore, to disadvantage ourselves from practicing Dharma in search of more material things is complete wrong livelihood. Just waste of funds. One may pull in more income, one may pull in more sort of just, but that very odd hours, long hours, difficult hours, sometimes injuries to the body, and then basically, then the whole livelihood became a cause of a hindrance to one's spiritual provision. When we prioritize our material worldly needs outweighs our spiritual aspiration, then becomes like this, So one has to be willing to renounce some. I think that's a must. Some renunciation. Of course, there will be degree of renunciation depending to our own capacity or good karma. But without learning to let go some things, it's very difficult to find the freedom to practice Dharma. So Nagarjuna is praying that may beings free themselves from the non-leisure situation, may give themselves the freedom. Don't make themselves time poor to practice and listen and read Dharma, because they're quite time-rich to sit around some places, everybody wrapped up in a blanket and beanies and so on, sitting around a soccer field for 3-4 hours. Whole family, very committed. Of course, we wanted to go and support somebody every now and then, but if we don't make our spiritual requirement some kind of profile, it will be neglected. And then, so we disadvantage ourselves. So may they be released from all condition of non-leisure, and have the freedom of their own action to practice. Not impeded by, this is too much, this is too devotional, this is too cultural, this is too long, or no, my body can't do this. No freedom to practice that, practice of the actions of the Dharma. No freedom of actions. Also, may all embodied beings have jewels in their hands. May their limitless necessity life remain unconsumed as long as there is a clinic. So it's talking about necessities, balance. He's not talking about completely go penniless and then practice Dharma like a mendicant. And he's particularly addressing this to the king. So he says, may all beings have necessary riches in their possessions, maybe wealth and provision, probably not so much things people count they're rich, but really just comfortable. So just comfortable, not too extreme, so much so that one's wealth become a cause of sleeplessness, a cause of a lot of aggression and greed and competition and not like that. Then, of course, definitely it will be very corrosive, very harmful. Where the body is very fragile, our health. Some people's health is pretty fragile just to do normal things. Then they push too much that they're not realizing how fragile their own body is. Enslave themselves for such a meaningless, hollow, mundane material things. Of course, if one is good at using them and allocating them, they're meaningful. But if there is no moderation, one can enslave oneself for those ephemeral, mundane things, and then have the material things, but they don't become the necessity. They become the burden. They become the trapper. They trap us. They limit our freedom. So he says, may people have those jewels and unconsumed by them. He has a necessity, but he's not downtrodden by the materialism and the things that he materially own or like to have. And they don't just take up all that time away. Have reasonable balance between one's spiritual aspiration and mundane worldly necessities. And may all women at all times become supreme persons. So here, of course, supreme person actually really means higher rebirth. In the Nagarjuna is very early, 2nd century AD. During those times, they definitely discriminated between gender. They thought male rebirth was supreme rebirth, and female were not. They have that attitude. And that's why the Jeffrey Hopkins footnotes here says that that a supreme person actually refers to those who have access to spiritual practices unimpeded. Unlike some places, they never thought that certain things are not meant for one type of person. So we're talking about offering prayers so that all people who are not comfortable in their biology, may they become what kind of forms they wish to be. There's a lot of people not happy in who they are, whatever. There's only 2 genders, but there are not a lot to choose. Not a lot to choose. If there were 4 or 5, I'm sure there will be quite a few who will change. But even within the 2, quite a lot of people are not happy in their skin. So we'd be the women who are not happy as a woman, or men who are not happy as a man. They become whatever is to their liking. May all beings have intelligence and the legs of ethics. So means that. So he's talking about people who have good life, but if they don't have the legs of ethics, meaning if they don't have legs of particular do's and don'ts, that they restrain some things that they know they need to make a reasonable adaptation to break their old habits. So intelligence to themselves voluntarily adopt those disciplines, which is called legs, because if one don't have the legs of the discipline, and then one can't travel. So being able to adhere to the path. May embodied beings have a pleasant complexion. This is talking about people's happiness, about their form or their appearance, and who doesn't want to have a good complexion? And those who are born with a good complexion and enjoy their looks, of course, are not without causes, not without causes. So you don't just pray for things without creating the causes of it. And others, unfortunately, born with a very difficult physical complexion, for deformities, and many senses impaired, and quite a lot of complicated birth. As a result of that, they have many people who have some kind of defects. From whether it's looks or function of the senses or the legs or whatever it is, good physics, good splendor, a pleasing appearance, freedom from disease. So even majority of people are, of course, thankfully not born fairly with all good physics, good complexion, and good physics, and good splendor, and nice whatever. But still, even the beautiful ones, even the tall ones, even the most person who's wonderful skin or complete, they still are subject to illness. It doesn't mean the person ugly looking will get sick also on top of that. Some people who might have a little physical deformities or quite a lot of people have those birth defects, but they do not necessarily have additional sickness. So there's no balance. Some might enjoy a beautiful physical body, but awful mind. Their mind is too sharp or too whatever, and then it's definitely for wrong reasons. And beautiful body, but no good mind. Other maybe beautiful body, beautiful mind, but still sick. And completely consumed by the illness. Their life even get cut short, let alone their capacity. Maybe they're really amazing, intelligent person, very professional in this or that trade or duties and responsibilities. But if they are robbed by the illness, and even those who are really blessed with good physique, amazing intelligence, and very good health, they hardly get any sick. But all of a sudden they die young. so short life, yeah. So life is very uneven, very uneven. Very few people. But some people who have all the above, they live long, they have good body, they don't get sick, they got everything, but not interested in spirituality. Totally not interested in spirituality. They think this is for some weird people or some weak people who don't have intelligence, go to Dharma or something, religion or something, Because they say religion is for people who don't have rational mind or something. There's that kind of attitude, They think people who believe like that, and they don't realize that that's why most people, even if they have a certain occasional spiritual hunger in them, they don't want to go to religion. They want to go to some non-religious spirituality. Of course, I don't know what's the difference between religion and spirituality, but definitely people have some kind of need for something special on top of whatever mundane material world provides. But not everybody's life is adequate from all front, All front, Yeah, some places they may be Dharma may be widespread, but their outside conditions is just so awful. But the Dharma becomes like a cultural sort of things they need to preserve because they're part of it. But to practice Dharma, they're not free because their whole life condition itself is awful. So they have to just work so hard just to keep a little roof over their head. And it's still then not enough. And so, they definitely are not free. They have the Dharma and temples right next door. But they are not free to practice. They're intrigued by all these people coming outside, coming to learn the things. Because for them it's only a cultural thing. They never had to have this intellectual, was a challenge to seek Dharma. Their everyday physical need itself is not available. So they just work so hard for so little income. And even that sometimes never get paid for months and months, because they never get on a kind of reliably every Thursday, every 2 Thursday payday they call it. And there is pay on paydays in the West. In the East they don't even know when the payday is. They have to chase up the guy who's, did you see him? No. Everybody goes after, he says, okay. But then months and months, they work like back-breaking work done, but still they haven't seen any money, And no security, no good condition, no holiday special, any of those things we have in the West. But people who have very good work conditions, they're just committed to the work. They're just committed to the work because it's so good condition, and so therefore they may have spiritual aspiration, but often that is some kind of a almost like a left to least priority. Your individual priority. There's no kind of a not that got much of a great norm, because people become intellectually and financially more independent. Therefore they think they should go by their parental spiritual practices or anything like that. Almost like you can see the kids going, well, whatever they do, whatever they do, they don't seem to have any responsibility to train them a little bit at a young age. They just, as if it's easier for them to find their way type of thing, and therefore there's a less kind of environment for people to actually tune themselves towards the practice of Dharma so easily. Where everybody, even if they are born with some skin birthmarks or something, their whole saving goes to remove that bit so that they can batch up some pieces of bottom meat from the bottom over here, and so they can make up for it out there. Most of the energy goes into that. Everybody promoting that sort of thing. You should do this. You should do. You should go there. You should go in plastic surgery. They're perfectly fine, but most of the people just goes on the physical body, repairing of that and trying to make that, and whole thing got so lopsided, if you like. May all be skilled in the means to extinguish suffering. Yeah. How many are skilled in learning how to extinguish suffering? That's a job, career, relationship. They don't extinguish suffering. They actually exacerbate suffering. They are more committed we become to those things. The aim is not so much to extinguish suffering. The aim is to get things, get possessions, positions. And these positions, in trying to seek and scheme and get and protect these things, are all afflictions. So it's completely difficult, to extinguish sufferings. None of the effort of mundane worldly person's effort are to extinguish sufferings. They hardly notice they are creating. They are thinking they're creating happiness. But the happiness that is very, very illusory. It's even if they did get some, it's only the pleasure of the skin only pleasing the 5 sense doors, which are completely unreliable themselves, let alone the things they are seeking for that, So neither the thing they are seeking pleasure for, nor the thing they are seeking pleasure from are reliable, are largely ruinous and controlled by others. Particularly if one is afflicted, even those having those do not do anything when the mind itself is completely injured by these afflictions. So therefore it's talking about none are aspiring to be skilled to extinguish sufferings. Most people are skilled to get more or gain more. More is merrier. More is more for cause of the suffering that we have to extinguish. So it's no point going that way when you have to extinguish all of that? So if the greed and attachment are not understood as a cause of suffering and cause of conflict, amazing conflict, fighting over whatever things is, all about things, not about to extinguish sufferings. If there's a little argument between two people about extinguishing suffering, maybe it's tolerable. Maybe it's worthwhile, But the argument is also to how much more we can enjoy each other. How much help we can get to get more type of attitude. As if we can get more, we be happy to. We even got a whole industry called advertisement that completely works on people's childishness of greed and desire, and they actually, all the advertisement goes to feed this delusion that more or faster or getting this is going to make one happy. That is, instead of extinguishing sorrow, it is actually building the sorrow and unconsciously. So may there be skill in the means to extinguish suffering and have liberation from all suffering. Most aren't getting liberation from suffering. They are almost like deliberately taught to create more sufferings. Of course, by the time they have really suffered to the backbreaking suffering, we can call like a midlife or something, They have suffered so much to get there, and even then, they are not getting liberation from any suffering. They got complete suffering, so to speak, Complete suffering. If not all the 8 sufferings, they have, if not on addition to the 8 traditional suffering, they have doubled their sufferings. Birth, old age, sickness, death, those sufferings is quite common. Don't even mention about that. On top of that, they are not able to get what they want. They're losing what they have. They cannot be with someone who they love. Those they are love, they have to part quickly. Those they don't want to be, they have to be with, and so on. So, but by that time, they would almost have lived most of its life already. Most of life has been lived under the huge burden of suffering. Inclination to the triple gem, that would be good. It's only those whose main aim is to extinguish suffering and gain liberation, then recognize the triple gem, then see the refuge, then see the preciousness of all. Above all things, triple gem becomes most exceedingly precious, you can see. So we have to gain kind of a kind of literacy of what is precious and what are not. And then you see the not only yourself having elevating your quality of refuge in the triple gem, but you actually have repeated joy of having the refuge. Then, of course, you will have a wish to how to cause inclination to others to meet the Dharma and the great wealth of Buddha's doctrine. And the person who has heard or read or learned the Dharma, they feel a lot more richer as a person, much more dignified as a person, much more useful as a knowledge or acquisition than any other wealth, even of Vaisravana or Vajrapāya or Zambala, or even if you became the most richest person in the world, you never could feel so adequate. If one has that the great wealth of the Buddha Dharma, you can see the immense benefit it can afford to anyone who might have the mental fitness to predispose to that. We weren't predisposing to the Dharma at the very beginning. Some things shifted. Some things are definitely necessary. And I'm sure there were others whose doing has some influence in our lives. I thought without that we will be completely lost in the mundane, worldly, material world. and gaining more or defeating others, and greed-driven kind of way of living is norm. It's in the most majority of a good high percentage of people in all countries. And there's no discrimination between West and East. Some people think Western is very materialist. Eastern is just worse. They just never have them. They never had a just good grip on it before. You wouldn't believe some of the Eastern families. They're just so rich. You wouldn't believe some of the people in India are so rich, and they're rich because all the families are connected to keep the rich keeping, and so they marry cousins so that the wealth doesn't go to other families. You see what I mean? And a lot of incestuous relationships are allowed so as to the wealth doesn't go to other places. In the ancient, even the Buddha's time, they all married the cousins so that the wealth of your uncle doesn't go to another person's home, stays within the family, you know. So even the whole system of materialism is the ills of the society, because there's no distinction between East and West. Maybe in the West people are actually less materialistic. You know, when they really wanted to give for something, they can just give. No questions asked. You know, in the East, it's quite a lot of strings attached. It's got a different way of doing things. Different way of doing things. When people become so enslaved by material wealth, when the wealth of the material is more important. In some places in the East, even they do the Dharma practice so that they can increase their wealth. So the Dharma practice can increase their wealth. Zambala, Vaishravana, Goddess Vasundhara. So they actually do practices. Instead of go and study economy, they study all this. They do all these wealth deities. As the deities could be bribed and then bring wealth and do all kinds of practices, which is quite questionable, really, to bring wealth to the home, and a lot of rituals and a lot of things we have never done here, so I can say this because otherwise I might sound like a hypocrite. In the most of the centers in East Asia, you know, there are some Westerners maybe, because depending to who runs and what. They have all these high lamas and half a dozen monks come to do wealth vases, to create vases. So they make some special, very beautiful vases and put all the precious stones, semi-precious stone, all the 5 grains, 5 kinds of jewelries and metals, and almost everything you put in the statue they put. And there are many other ingredients you got to put, and then the whole vase is consecrated and blessed and honored for a number of days. And then that wealth vase is meant to be kept in your home, a particular part of your home, you know, maybe in the safe, maybe in the safe or somewhere. And they create a little shrine there, and you make daily prayers there in order to bring luck and wealth to the home. And they actually change these every year, you know. Every year they have to change these. They're doing that, you know. So. And even the lamas, the monks, are mainly coming to do those rituals. You know, in the morning till afternoon, they do 3-4 days, they do the ritual and they go. And and then each of the vases has to be sponsored. Maybe $300 for one vase. So if I can sell 500 vases on a weekend, I'm doing pretty good. And then they use that sort of, and then of course how many vases you can sponsor, you know you've been doing the last 20 years, you probably have at least half a dozen wealth vases in your room, but your bank balance hasn't gone up. So quite a lot of people are thinking, oh gosh, this is Vajrayana, yeah. So some Vajrayana extreme practices can actually making even the Dharma itself is generated largely to acquire material wealth for the sake of the material, while actual teaching itself doesn't happen. Amazing. There's actually no teaching at those centers. Nobody hardly teaches. Nobody hardly want to teach. Nobody hardly want to sit and listen every week. Who want to sit there and listen every week? It's amazing, Hardly any of them are teaching centers, Mainly rituals. All rituals supported. So as we're talking about here, how much people treasure the materialism, spiritual materialism, rather than spiritualism itself. Of course, a little bit of what do you call material mundane needs has to be acquired one way or another. It's Buddha said, my Sangha will never die of hunger without selling wealth vases. But of course, there's nothing wrong with some of those rituals. But if it does support the teaching as well, the teachings are not happening. Actually, His Holiness Dalai Lama has been sort of pulling the leg of the people when he traveled in Ladakh and all those places who are culturally Buddhist. He said they're all very Buddhist and they all receive the lamas and great ceremony, great pomp and ceremony, big expenses Buddha. And he said, do you know what is Buddha? What is Dharma? They don't know that. They said, Padmasambhava must be one of them. Natisha's another. And they start counting down fingers of some names they were. They haven't heard any of the teaching. So that's sad, isn't it? So that's why I'm talking about. And with great wealth of Buddha's doctrine, the scriptures, the teaching, the history, the knowledge, the practices. So that's why Nagarjuna is offering his prayer. May all be skilled in learning to extinguish their sufferings, and have liberation from the suffering. Most people want to liberate from suffering, but things they employ to liberate suffering gets the suffering accelerated or become escalated to the higher level of suffering than they thought. And very few have inclination to turn to the triple gem. And so may they be adorned with love, compassion, joy, and even-mindedness. So these are the four immeasurables. So Nagarjuna offers prayer as a bodhisattva. Now, as a bodhisattva is try to, because if one hasn't got the good understanding of the afflictions to turn away from, one could not have these kind of what they call intelligent emotion. We call wholesome thoughts. Like if a person were to be adorned with loving kindness, means he's adorned with loving kindness means he has understanding of what loving kindness is. It's not confusing loving kindness with attachment, not confusing loving kindness with control and possessiveness. With adorned with love is a person who's adorned with love has a lot of peace and contentment. Not seeking things from others, things like they are adorned, like they are beautified by their love. Simple though their living is, things they have may be basic, but they look very contented. Then their wanting is so little. When you have loving kindness, what you want from others isn't that great, And compassion is that you can work with the sentient beings who have sufferings. Because you have compassion. Those who don't have compassion, they cannot work with sentient beings who have suffering. And so they can't work with anybody because very few sentient beings are without suffering. Every sentient being has suffering. And those who are intolerant to each other, they're not adorned by compassion. Then they will be adorned by judgment, punishment, anger, disappointment, and negativities. So that's exactly. So one who's adorned with compassion is actually now can work with the difficult sentient beings because he has compassion. He knows the suffering and its impermanence. He knows suffering is to be extinguished by his compassion. He doesn't look for sentient beings who have no suffering so that he can practice compassion too. Because he doesn't, then his compassion got no role. So it's not that when our compassion is getting bigger, better, well adorned, if we are more adorned with compassion, doesn't mean we meet less and less problem people. We will still have more people with similar or more problem, but our wisdom and way we work with them is even greater. So if we are adorned by compassion, adorned by compassion is no ordinary word. Gempa, that you are adorned by compassion. You're completely sealed in compassion. You are not dentable by suffering and difficulties of other people. It's very important. It has to be compassion adorned person complains not. When somebody is violent or aggressive, that is the time you practice compassion. That is, if you're adorned with compassion, you will be able to do that. If you are devoid of compassion, you will react and scream and throw stones at them. A simple difference is very obvious. And one who's adorned by joy, his joy is, even with difficult sentient beings, he knows it's only through these difficult sentient beings I have the likelihood of practicing Dharma. So he rolls his sleeves to practice with as he has refuge. As he has refuge in the Dharma, he's not intimidatable by difficult sentient beings. That's why he took refuge. And he took refuge. He's got like a comprehensive insurance, so to speak. Then he doesn't worry about a little bruise on his car, a little dent on his car. He's got comprehensive insurance. Joy is like that. They got peace of mind. Where does peace of mind comes? You're not attached to the things. Because those things and people, difficulties are the very, things, the fuels that you can burn your own ego and neurosis and then develop them and turn them into joy. Joy is not absence of sorrow. Joy is being able to work with sorrowful people and then test one's own stamina, bodhicitta, and all of that. It's like being able to sit on a test after studied so long. Those people who studied so long, they're really looking forward to the test. Those who haven't studied the test, they really look like they want to escape. They wanted to postpone the test. So difficult sentient beings is a test of whether you have the fitness to practice your Dharma. So joy, we had the name of the first Bhumi is joyful one. He's now never be gloomy faced towards difficult sentient beings. It's not the kind of we are not talking about joy as some kind of a smiling and very kind of a superficial smile and that kind of teeth showing receptionist, We're not talking. This joy is say you're attacked, you are accused or what. You don't get depressed by it. You say, working with these kind of sentient beings is now they're delivering my own past tricks of negative karma that I consummated in the past. Now they're testing my ability to own them or not. So when you can think like that, you're already in a very good predisposition, isn't it? But when you think, why they do this to me? Kind of attitude, then of course we couldn't stand. We will straight away show lack of joy, and you don't show gloomy face, you don't show dark face, you don't show weariness. It's difficult. When the things are difficult, that you actually like to test your skills, even that you have been training in meditation, in prayer, in practices. Those are all rehearsal. The real time to check the rehearsing you can perform is when you really meet with obstacles, because joy means absence of sadness. For oneself, Absence of sadness for the other, of course you will have.
You have to have compassion to work joyfully with other sentient beings. If you don't feel their sorrow, you can't practice joyfully. But if you have a sorrow of other that overwhelms you, you can't have joy. Most people find overwhelmed by the sorrow of others. They thought they have reasonable compassion, but when it comes to having to share long or share repeatedly, then they're starting to show the true color. So then they're starting to show they don't like it. They don't like to go through the suffering. So they are not interested to extinguish suffering. Suffering is not extinguished by avoiding them or denying them. Suffering is like a karmic debt. If you didn't pay the karmic debt, they just accrue with the interest. Empathy for the sorrow of others does almost like breaks your heart, but it doesn't impede our ability to reduce their sorrow, and it doesn't increase our hopelessness. We might be just as tearful and so on, but it still focuses our mind that what can we do in the meantime that actually reduce the slight symptoms of their sorrow. And then it does not add to your own ineffectiveness, but actually your usefulness is not impeded by your feeling somewhat heartbroken. Now, heartbroken probably is a bit extreme explanation. Heartbroken sounds like there's nothing much left, it's all broken into pieces. But this deep sense of sorrow, what they call the tearful sorrow, is necessary. That's what the Avalokitesha is, always shedding tears. He's always in tears, but he's not sobbing to make himself helpless and not useful. You are very teary, but your teariness is out of empathy for the other. But you need to have a little bit of wisdom, seeing the emptiness of the suffering, impermanence of the suffering, and not thinking it's not only this person who I have only responsible to. All sentient beings are like this. Wherever you go, east, west, north, south, they're all wealthy, poor, doesn't matter whether alone or many, they all are stuck in this kind of sorrow. So we universalize this suffering. Bodhisattvas don't have to see in specific sufferings to break their heart. They're always heartbroken in any ways. That's why they have renunciation. Their heart's always broken. They don't have to see one or two persons suffering and then they get heartbroken. They're just constantly thinking of the sorrow and pitifulness of sorrow. It's not that they just see one suffering and then they get heartbroken. Of course, we as beginners are like that. We're so fragile. We can't do much with sorrow. We just have to pick and choose what is easy for us. And those we can do. And quickly we can't even look at it. And we just rather someone else look after it because they're better equipped and they're not fearful or whatever. When you become slowly grown up bodhisattva, the heartbrokenness of sentient being suffering is you don't even need to be wrong. You even need to be told. Even people look like having a great fun or party in a big place. The bodhisattva is always mournful of the sorrow that is under those festivals, that is under those singing and dancing. Bodhisattva is always heartbroken. They say, "Oh, poor childish, they're so lost in these little toys and little activity." Deep down, they're all sort of completely injured by the ignorance and so on. Bodhisattva must always have this mentality to be tuned to this incredible sorrows of sentient beings. You cannot switch compassion unless you always switch on with sufferings and sorrows. So the incessantness of sorrow makes the incessantness of compassion more pertinent. if the compassion is just like a first aid type of thing, and that you comes when, and then all of a sudden the symptoms gone, then no need, oh, that's good, now put the feet up and have a beer and watch a telly. Not that sort of thing. Bodhisattvas might even do those things too, but deep down they're constantly like they say, like a deer in the group of deer who has been injured, He does not have the joy to gallop with the rest, He would love to, but he's now already injured, He's dripping with blood, he's injured, but he's been running with the group as long as he can, but there will be a time he can't. So Bodhisattva must act like injured in their heart, because they can never switch the eye off the sorrow of sentient beings. And they are not finding some sorrows heartbreaking, others time they're perfectly normal. That they don't. Bodhisattvas survey the plight of suffering without having to tell them. They survey the sufferings of lower realms more than we have to report in our dailies. They have cognizance of the plight of sentient beings, just unimaginable sorrows they can see. That's why the Bodhisattvas have this prayerful dedication to walk or work for sentient beings ceaselessly, So it's not like 9 to 5 or from this time to that time, or this is Dharma and this is not Dharma. There is no time they are not practicing Dharma. And so we are talking here those who are adorned with such joy, those who do not take anything personally very long, and they haven't lost the joy or dedication with that, and they universalize that. Oh, not just me and this person, but the sentient beings are all like this poor thing. And so one doesn't get the other person's suffering to overwhelm oneself. One is already overwhelmed enough to have this commitment, not to stay not in non-abiding nirvana. That's what they don't. They don't abide nirvana. They can't abide in nirvana. Why? Because they're needed to be where there is a heartbreaking sufferings. So it's not a question of bodhisattvas, individuals going through difficulties. That is considered the least of problems, if they can be usefully heartbroken. You see, we are uselessly heartbroken for miserable things, but the bodhisattvas are usefully heartbroken, and Chenrezig means ever crying bodhisattva. Ever crying bodhisattva. These cries are not out of selfishness, not because someone's complaining that he did this to me, and that kind of sorrow is not like that. That's the joy, is that your cry, your sorrow has a use as a useful endeavor and effort, and hence the bodhisattva is very even-minded, devoid of afflictive emotions. Hence the 4 immeasurables he actually practices. Giving, discipline, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, all the 6 parameters. The bodhisattva now knows how his generosity, how his other aspect of the 6 parameters goes a long way to mature and ripen other beings. Bodhisattva himself is somewhat matured from within to be able to output those things. Completing the 2 accumulations, merit and wisdom, may they have the brilliant marks and beautiful features even while on the path. So it's talking about how practitioners who have the good merit to acquire this merit and wisdom, may they become a distinct figure. Brilliant marksmen, may they have this positive influence on other sentient beings. While they live, they actually make a huge presence that is admired, inspiring, and benevolent. And may they That's right. And may they cross without interruption the 10 inconceivable grounds. So meaning that may those sentient beings who are now recruited on the path will gradually take steps on the 10 paths, 10 sort of bhumis, successively as every endeavoring bodhisattva will do. May I also be adorned completely with those and all other good qualities, be free from all defects, and have superior love for all sentient beings. Meaning that ordinary love is not going to do. No, those kind of love with finite person, a finite reason, finite time, and so on is not. Love has to be for all sentient beings, and at all situations. That which surpasses ordinary love, and devoid of all the defects. All the defects. So it's talking about if any one sentient being are equipping themselves with these qualities, their useful, positive influence on others will starting to show the benefits to others. It's just like having many people to cover the various stations, and then they all covered, because may I perfect all the virtues for which all sentient beings hope, and may I always, because some people hope some qualities in each of us. So one is offering prayer that may I be able to slowly acquire better and eventually perfect those qualities, and may I always relieve the suffering, because then only can we relieve the sufferings. Otherwise, we wish to relieve each other's suffering, but we add to the sufferings of each other, only to make matters worse because of the mutual delusion and karma. So that's why most sentient beings' relationship is all about sufferings. And if they don't have things to do with people, they wish they had things to do with it. Once they have, it becomes cause of mutual suffering, because neither of the two, unless one is slightly different, are equipped enough to help each other. So actually start harming. And even as a slow level bodhisattva also like that. They can't always please and make perfect treatment to all beings until they're all happy. You might be able to please a couple of thousand, but you will be upset just as many. It's amazing. So that's usually the case. Shakyamuni Buddha had a lot of rivals, a lot of critics, a lot of people who were after him, who were just jealous of him. Even his own relatives were very jealous. They're making all kinds of stories against him, and all of that, So, of course, the Buddha had to show this. Even the bodhisattvas, however how exalted bodhisattvas, they too have some karma. But nevertheless, the actual benefit they did on the ground during their lifetime might be not everybody, but the good they did benefit ever since then is quite amazing, So the bodhisattva's legacy is superior of the love than the loving that people do only for finite persons and finite objects. May I perfect all the virtues from which all sentient beings hope. We have hope towards each other and relieve the sufferings of all those. May those being in all worlds who are distressed, so many people are distressed these days, from fear, fear of all kinds of things, natural disasters, man-made disasters, their own afflictions, their own childish reactions, and they fear that, but they just do that, and they go very far to do something, and hopefully they will be okay. But then things doesn't go well. Then they just completely cancel that and make things very worse. Well, I'm talking about a person, a couple. A couple came to the retreat, and then both are relatively new, but husband ran out of cigarette, Husband ran out of cigarette. Then he has to leave the retreat to get downhill to get cigarette, which is a bit over an hour and a half to go and get the cigarette. But of course, then he says, "I got too many things to do. I might as not come back." So people try very hard, but then they hope they could stay through. But no, then because the one didn't stay through, the other one was blaming the other. So people like that. They're not able to fulfill each other's hope, and wish I came by myself. Then I don't have to worry about. And may I always relieve the sufferings of all those beings. Through fear, distress through fear, become entirely fearless, even though merely hearing my name. See, Nagarjuna is talking about, like the Bodhisattva or medicine Buddha, they pray that may those beings who are otherwise very frightened, otherwise very distressed, feel very, very hopeless, just by hearing the name of the Buddha, hearing the name of the Manjushri or medicine Buddha or any practice, Nagarjuna, even merely through my hearing my name, he's dedicated. He dedicated that those who hear my name may remember a few of these verses and then give them some hope give them some hope not to stay extremely distressed through seeing and thinking of me, or only hearing my name. This is Nagarjuna dedicating, people who think his thoughts, his writings, and seeing his image or hearing his name, may beings attain great joy. He just dedicated. Why? Because he means every word he says, and he's just making people think, wow, that's amazing. You can think like such certitude, such confidence, such prayerful, and not giving up on what they can't do, but still they are living a their legacy. May they be able to find some comfort and peace by merely remembering my name, by merely hearing of my name, merely remembering my name. So he says, may beings attain great joy, naturalness, free from error. All of a sudden, because of Nagarjuna's quotations, are very beautiful to remember. If you can remember, like say he says, mindfulness is blissful, mindlessness is not. Things like that. So when people are miserable, they realize because they're not mindful. And when they're happy, they don't think he got this, he got that, but no, I'm mindful, therefore I'm happy. When people can remember that, they wouldn't be hunting, seeking things that are not cause of happiness. Mindfulness is blissful, he said. He doesn't say those who have a lot of money is blissful. It doesn't say that, because it's not. Those who have they have a lot of headache, a lot of anxieties. But those who are mindful and grateful, they are very peaceful. And so when people remember Nagarjuna or his quotation, he said they will bring joy. It will bring some the joy, and that's why I have a good book. It's a very good book. Very good book is good book. Some people going for this, that, if they have a good book, they read it, and they wouldn't believe how much there is in those books, completely packed with a lot of wisdom there, and you will find amazing material to make us not to go wrong. He says, naturalness free from error. Yeah, when you acquire very near to Dharma, your mind will be naturally turned to light, will not turn to error. Definiteness toward complete enlightenment. So mind will take steps towards the path of enlightenment and not make any sort of wrong move. And the five clairvoyances. The five clairvoyances are some skills. Clairvoyance, visual clairvoyance, auditory clairvoyance. Auditory clairvoyance is just hearing from far and hearing. But these days we can hear so many things from the other side of the world, but nothing to add, just to add to the anxiety. So clairaudience probably not necessarily. In the ancient times, they thought because they can't see anything far through dish machine, they don't know anything what's going on. Nowadays, we can just switch it on and we can see. But what's there? Nothing extraordinary. It's just to add to the anxiety, I suppose. So clairvoyance or auditory clairvoyance or clairvoyance. Knowing other people's mind, it's knowing other people's mind would be awfully difficult to me. I think if we hardly got a ability to know our mind, sometimes we don't like what our mind is like. So to know people's mind is not a really great aspiration. I don't think I have one. Why you want to go in somebody else's head? Knowing people's mind. Clairvoyance, knowing magical emanations, meaning this is like showing little magical tricks to impress on other people. This is where the spirituality can be hijacked by materialism, because you can show a few things to impress people, and then people only think Dharma is a spectacle or something. Dharma is not even temporary enjoyment, let alone. It should be temporarily. It probably might have to be very challenging, very unenjoyable, very difficult. But so it's quite a different kind of flavor, and clairvoyance of knowing and remembering former lives. I think these are probably most useful of the five. Is if we remember past lives, then we don't doubt future lives. And then we don't doubt past lives, parents and loved ones, and so on. So it's not a lot of difficulty. And most people have no access to have such wisdom. Through the meditation is very inadequate, so they cannot have the qualities with which they can remember past lives. Like the Buddha and many advanced practitioners, they could remember many past lives. A lot of the Tibetan lineage masters famous, they could remember 30 lives, 25 lives. Like Manjushri, Sakya Pandita could remember all his past 25 lives, and his each life he was guided by Manjushri. When people have those, they're not making these up, And the stories are completely tally. They can remember each. In that life I did this, and that life I did this. So all of those lineage great masters have consistently supported the Dharma in that capacity. And so devoted people, when they get to know one or two of them, then they too, through part of their experience, have the faith in the past life and also future life. It's past life and future life is not a great thing to have. It just shows that that consequences of past wrongdoings affect us, or good doings also affect us. And we are not experiencing now because we have been smart in this life, that we all the goodness we have are also results of past good doings. And we rejoicingly, therefore, not waste that current positive circumstances, we become that much more easier to accept the defeats and difficulties in this life. Also, we say, I must have done this to him. That's why this is happening. So you don't try to retaliate. You don't try to make it worse because you think, this must also pass a result. And hence we become more thoughtful of what we do now, knowing that what we do now will also have consequences. And everything we do without believing and becoming Buddhist, people are doing that. People working 25 years, back-breaking job in some place. Hopefully, when they retire, they will have at least a little bit of comfort to look after in their retirement. And it's usually true. Those who have put their work harder, they have. Nobody is cheated by the law of karma. They have been actually been rewarded. So here, talking about these 5 clairvoyances throughout their continuum of lives, not just in one life, but life after life. May I always, in all ways, bring help and happiness to all sentient beings. The main benefit of remembering past life and having some clairvoyance is almost saying, I can see what can I do that will benefit to this person. So therefore, we are not just trying to implicate them or try to bribe them in the time being. We actually know what is really going to be good to them. And we can actually cause them great benefit in that way because we have the certitude, we can know, and we have confidence. We are not that kind of a half-heartedly trying to see whether it works or not type of thing, and otherwise willing to give up quickly because things are going difficult. It's not. Once you have such a vision, you don't mind how long it takes, how many setbacks you suffer, but you still are unintimidated or impeded by those difficulties. That's the kind of benefit. One realizes what you have to do if it's benefit to others. Even if it's awfully inconvenient, it's the most difficult one. That's what you have to do. even though it's awful, it's very unpleasant, very difficult, very challenging. That's exactly what you have to go through. And such kind of vision will be in the mind of one who has this experience. May I always, without harm, simultaneously stop all beings in all worlds who wish to do harm. So we're talking about how quickly do we become an interrupter in someone's mutually harmful deeds that they are about to consummate, meaning that the wrong and harmful they are doing. May I always be an object of enjoyment, meaning that how can one be skillfully do or appear or speak or and don't do that is creating a small kind of pleasantness to others for all sentient beings according to their wish. Therefore, whatever we do is to please and comfort even temporarily to the sentient beings, and so long as it is them making happy, then we are willing to put out that and without interference, as are the earth. So he's now saying, may I emulate like the earth or the water or the sky or the trees are. So like Nagarjuna says in one of the earlier in the text, may I be like just as long as the earth, the water and soil, and may I too remain like them. That there is really no demand from the earth making to us or water making to us. They're just space making. They're just simply there, being there. May I too be without any interference, without any discrimination. Like earth will never discriminate who can sit there, who can do that. It doesn't, It's human beings who create demarcation, who can use whose nation it is, so on. But earth itself has not discriminated against anyone. Likewise, may I too, as a bodhisattva, it says, may I always be an object of enjoyment for all sentient beings according to their wish, without interference, as are the earth, water, fire, wind, herbs, and wild forest. And so the herbs and forests and all the beautiful nature, nature nurtures more, they call it. And sometimes it's bodhisattvas actually, or not only pray, that they actually become inanimate objects to soothe the sentient beings. May I as dear to sentient beings as their own life, So, so meaning we are. May we be dear. May we practice dearness and closeness and compassion to others as they would look after their life. May I be able to treat their life as they like themselves to look after it. It's almost like may we be able to make them happy as much as they want themselves to do. And may they be even more dear to each other. So it's not so much to prove that we are the one who's going to rescue the world type of thing, not trying to be the rescuer, but so that we can actually influence others to do that to the other. Then we have empowered them to do that to each other. We are not making them feel as we are going to rescue one by one with them without having to do anything, Actually empowering them to do that to each other. Bodhisattvas simply exemplify. Bodhisattvas simply do the guiding, do the leading, I suppose, do the leading. May the ill deeds fructify for me, and meaning that may their wrongdoings do not become useless, but become fruitful for me to deal with without overreacting to their wrong deeds. Bodhisattvas don't overreact to wrong deeds. They use the wrong deeds as a cause to exhaust the karma. So if we can be useful to exhaust the karma, even somebody is a little bit aggressive, if we don't retaliate, it may be useful to exhaust their karma. Such should be our wish. Its question isn't so much how inconvenient it is to us. Question is how useful that inconvenience was. Life is full of inconvenience anyway. Might as well make useful inconveniences. So at least the one is not wasting the inconveniences. Yeah. Inconvenient though it might be, they go pleasure. They say, it's too much for you. They say, oh, pleasure. When is inconvenient pleasure? When we have the right frame of mind. May their ill deeds fructify me, and my own virtues fructify for them, So that if we have good deeds, may that ripen them. May they give them some good fruit. They hardly get exposed to someone who will do good deeds and let them be benefited. Or if you can make some beings happy through your good deeds, then your good deeds are not just sort of proudly using for oneself, What's the point of having something but you have no one to share to? At least even you have something, your goodness are there to be shared to other beings, make them ripen. Oh, what must have he done to deserve all of that? And then, of course, they will know, one who do this will be born with such right conditions. Others who do this, they will be born with such things, In the teaching says elsewhere, the one who killed other living beings, they will have short life. One who speaks a harsh, bad mouth to others, they were born with this terrible breath smell. Foul mouth, they say. Not just foul mouth in speaking, but even the breath is very awful. The whole body odor is just almost like a nerve gas or something. Yeah. So they are not. These are causes. These are cause of some doings in the past now become result. The thorn becomes sharp, and pea become round. There are causes why they become so round and they become so sharp, and they are not causeless. Sort of incidents. They are causes that makes them like that. And they both growing. They're both growing from the soil. One plant is growing sharp thorns, in everywhere sharp, all these thorns. Another plant giving sort of birth to all these beautiful edible fruits. They hardly got any, it's growing from the same soil, but the seed and all the other properties that is there makes the things that grow unique to that. So that's why. So, as long as any sentient being anywhere has not been liberated, may I remain in the world for the sake of that being, though I have attained highest enlightenment. Now, this is a very most important bodhisattva vow, is not so much to reach Buddhahood oneself ahead of anyone, but to reach Buddhahood after everybody has reached that. So there's no rush. It's really good. There's no hurry, no need to get everything right to reach there ahead of everyone. That's not the objective of the bodhisattva. So therefore, the bodhisattva needs to aspiring himself in this way, not only honor the past Buddhas and bodhisattvas through the sevenfold prayer, but always offer his own mental services, mental aspiration to be of such a beneficial use for the sake of all sentient beings. So that concludes the whole section. That we did this tonight is called limitlessness of causes, because of aspiring to help limitless sentient beings. So the intention with which one schemes and plans and aspires to benefit other beings, because sentient beings are just as limitless as unimaginably they are, so we must also be willing to scheme and plan and tailor to work with sentient beings. Even if one thing way doesn't work, we should still aspire more. What different ways I may do to help them. So never to give up on any particular sentient beings, because the whole purpose is to to be of use and benefit until all sentient beings are liberated for them. And it is one's prayer is so that even I can quickly attain ultimate enlightenment myself, but it would not be cause of celebration to do that until all sentient beings have been liberated. So which means the Bodhisattva's whole aspiration is to remain with very, very awful situations, and until each and every one of their predicament and their situations are liberated, one is offering prayer not to have this I would say not to have this hasty mind wanting to achieve enlightenment so quickly, become almost so impatient, Quite a lot of people at the beginning they think like that. Oh, I want to attain enlightenment, as if this is too much. The samsara is too much for me, and I have to really get there because the storm is coming, type of thing. so I have to get out before the storm can touch me, type of thing. Of course, that kind of reaching the summit ahead of everyone is not the criteria of the Mahayana. Mahayana means greater objectives is until all beings attain enlightenment. There is no such priority. So we'll conclude here and do the dedication merits. By the merit of this, may we attain the state of omniscience, defeat evil enemies, defilements. May I liberate all sentient beings from the samsara oceans, turbulent waves, birth, old age, sickness, and death. By listening to the excellent precious mind and teaching, whatever boundless merit I acquired, may all sentient beings become precious and stainless vessels to retain the excellent and precious Mahayana teachings. May the supreme and precious bodhicitta take birth, we have not done so, where it was born, may it increase abundantly without degeneration.